Thank you, Tony Coelho, one of the great leaders for people with disabilities in this country. I've had the pleasure to serve with Tony on the board of AAPD. And Tony, it's great to be here with you in Columbus, Ohio. Let me just start by saying what a privilege and honor it is to represent President Obama here at this historic forum on disability issues. Just being present at this forum, together with so many local activists and so many leaders in national disability organizations, makes me proud to be a person with a disability. Yeah. And although we may be diverse and represent many different constituencies, we're all here and united because of our common belief. Our common belief that people with disabilities want a fair shot at the American dream. Access to the same opportunities as every other American, and including the right to vote and exercising our right to vote. And President Obama understands our history. He understands our movement as a civil rights struggle. When we use terms such as exclusion and words such as dignity and self-determination, and when we talk about being housed and transported and educated in separate institutions, President Obama knows exactly what we mean. The purpose of this forum is to recognize the importance of the disability vote. And mobilizing the disability vote is not about advancing the needs of some narrow interest group. There are millions of people impacted by the very discussions that we're having today in Columbus. 50 million Americans, 1 in 4 veterans that are returning from our wars overseas, 1 in 3 seniors have a functional impairment, and over 70% of seniors will need some sort of long-term care services at some point in their lives. 66 million Americans are caregivers, and therefore also have a direct interest in the issues that we're discussing here today. And the baby boom is just beginning. So this is really about every single family in America. And you know what? It's about my family too. Because for over 70 or 80 years, the Kennedy family has been involved in these issues, prompted by my Aunt Rosemary, who was born with an intellectual disability. Many of you know her story. Many of you know the story of my Aunt Eunice Kennedy Shriver and starting Special Olympics and her advocacy work on behalf of people with intellectual disabilities. And it's something that our family has been proud of. It's a personal. Tip O'Neill said, all politics is personal. Well, you know what? All politics is local. Well, in my family, all politics is personal. And it's the same with Barack Obama. And I joined this community when I lost my leg when I was 12 years old. And my father, because of he had a sister with an intellectual disability, because he sat in a waiting room in the hospital with all the other parents whose children were also undergoing cancer treatment, worried about, are we going to be bankrupt by our health care bills? Am I going to get fired because I'm choosing to be with my kid instead of at my job? Those are the things that prompted him to get involved in family and medical leave and in the Affordable Care Act. And Barack Obama has the same kind of empathy and the same kind of personal involvement in these issues. When his father-in-law, Michelle talked about this, when his father-in-law was diagnosed with MS, he was worried about how he was going to pay those medical bills. And when Barack Obama talks about student loans, he's speaking from experience of having somebody who was stressing out about how he was going to pay off those loans. The fact is, he understands what most Americans have to deal with. Now, I want to say I express my appreciation and respect to all the candidates who are here today and their surrogates, Democratic and Republican, who have made the time to participate. As you all know, historically, disability rights have enjoyed strong bipartisan support. People like my dad who are strong advocates, yet he never hesitated to cross the aisle to try to expand Medicaid with Orrin Hatch, or to try to advance the ADA with Bob Dole, or to try to begin to create a public school education for people with disabilities with Lowell Weicker. That was his style okay? And let me just say about Cathy McMorris Rodgers that the entire Kennedy family holds her with the highest amount of personal admiration and respect. And I think that all of us in the disability community owe her a great deal of gratitude for everything she's done to raise awareness of these issues in Washington, D.C. Now, if a different kind of Republican, other than Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers, were at the top of the ticket, I think the disability community could rest a lot more easily. And with all due respect to Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers, she is going to have a very difficult time explaining and defending the politics of her party, because there's a very strong contrast between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party on the issues of disability law. The problem is there's something very wrong about the modern Republican Party. Their leader, Governor Mitt Romney, has expressed contempt for the 47%. He said, my job is not to care about those people. Do you know who he was referring to, right? He said that his message to people with disabilities is, you're on your own. Well, I'm here to tell you this is not President Obama's view of the world. His campaign slogan, as you just heard, is forward together. He asked me to come here to Ohio to make sure that all of you understand that he values the contribution of every single American, including every single American with a disability. He believes that America prospers when we're all in this together, and that everyone plays by the same rules and everyone has a fair shot at success. So in short, on disability issues, the 2012 presidential election presents a very stark choice between two very different visions for the future. Now, that's taken me 6 or 7 minutes, okay? So I have many other things I'd like to discuss. I'm looking forward to discussing them with Mr. Sesno, things like jobs, education, housing, telecommunication and technology policy, healthcare, civil rights, and international disability rights. And hopefully we'll have time to talk about all those subjects. But let me just leave you with some comments about 2 of those subjects, healthcare and civil rights. You see, because Governor Romney's plan for healthcare is to, quote, kill it dead. That's what he wants to do with President Obama's healthcare reform efforts, which is very puzzling, of course, because as we all know, he was the architect for this very same plan that we are now trying to implement nationwide. Although he doesn't like to talk about it, my father considered it one of his proudest moments, standing with Governor Romney, working in a bipartisan way and trying to accomplish something for all Americans. But the fact is, with President Obama's healthcare reform efforts, our country will be greatly expand the control that people with disabilities have over their own lives and put an end to the worst kind of industry abuses and tactics. I just met a 17-year-old young woman in Sioux Falls last Saturday. And she had bone cancer just like I did, 17 years old, lost her leg just like me. And thanks to President Obama, her family will no longer have to be worried about an insurance company denying her coverage based on her pre-existing condition. Because just like me, she now has a pre-existing condition based on her pediatric cancer history. That insurance company will no longer be able to impose a lifetime cap. They won't be able to drop her. They won't be able to cancel the coverage now that she's sick. So, and thanks to President Obama, they won't be able to discriminate based on a person's medical history or genetic information. So we're going to hopefully have a lot more time to talk about President Obama's plans to expand Medicaid coverage, including community-based supports such as Community First Choice, which are cheaper and more preferable, and save tax dollars by reducing nursing home placement and creating financial incentives for states to expand the use of personal care attendants instead of nursing home services. Already, 3 million young Americans have gotten coverage because they can stay on their parents' plan until they turn 26. Already, 5 million seniors have seen benefits from the closing of the donut hole. So in contrast, the Romney-Ryan budget is cut Medicaid by 1/3 and give a tax break to the millionaires. That's what his budget is. And to turn Medicare into a voucher program. Hopefully we're going to have the chance to talk about exactly how those programs are going to impact people with chronic illnesses and conditions and people with disabilities. Now, I'll just leave you with a few comments on the issue of civil rights. Many of you know that I'm a disability rights attorney, and these are issues that I focus on very closely. And on the issue of civil rights, the disability community has no better friend in Washington than President Obama. He has a very strong record of ADA enforcement. His Department of Justice has engaged in over 40 Olmstead enforcement actions in over 25 states, supporting independent living and not institutionalization. In contrast, the Republican Party supports legislation, it's already passed the House, for example, to defund the Department of Efforts enforcement, particularly in the areas of their desire to try to enforce the ADA and issues such as access to swimming pools in hotels, just like the one that we're in. Now, there's some hotel chains, like the Marriott chain, that, you know what? They said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and do this because it's the right thing to do. Put a lift in every single one of their hotel swimming pools because it's the right thing to do and because people with disabilities represent a huge market. We are a huge market. That should be one of the underlying messages that we all take home to. Not only are we a huge voting bloc, but we're a huge market too. But do you know what? The House Republicans passed a law basically stripping the Department of Justice efforts, so they neutered their capability to go and make sure that people with disabilities have access to swimming pools and recreation areas. That's what we're talking about. The Republican Party also supports the ADA Notification Act. Now, what does that do? That undermines the authority of the Department of Justice and private citizens to enforce their own civil rights. And this is offensive to people with disabilities around the country. The idea is that businesses do not have an affirmative obligation to continuously practice non-discrimination. That's wrong. And that's just another example of the stark difference between President Obama and his Republican counterpart. I'd love to get the chance to talk about disability rights. I see Mark on his way up, so I'll make a couple of closing comments. And just to say that this election is about choice. It really is. On disability policy, the choice is clear. I've only had time to highlight a few key issues here, but it's important to remember the core values of fairness in the Democratic Party, that we're all in this together. So on behalf of President Obama, I ask you for your vote, and I ask you for your support on Election Day. Thank you very much.